Let's jump right into lesson 3 in our AI comms course. All right, so this lesson is all about mastering LLM communication. LLM, of course, standing for large language models. That's OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, Google Gemini, just to name a few. So it's important to know that with different AIs, especially different LLMs, we've got different superpowers in front of us. And knowing which one to use, this changes everything, it really does. So when it comes down to it, these are the two that I like the most, and I'm going to throw in a couple bonuses as well. Claude, specifically Claude Projects, is my go-to copywriter. I never need to hire another copywriter again, unless I want someone to manage the whole process of using my AI to generate copy. But literally, Claude is a better copywriter than any copywriter I could ever hire. That's because we've set up our project with training data, which you learned about in the last lesson. ChatGPT, specifically custom GPTs that contain all of your information, whether it's about you, your brand, or your clients, that is a Swiss Army knife because you can use custom GPTs to do a lot of individual things. And here in the labs, as you know, we have a lot of custom GPTs, bots. So you can use those to research, to write, to create, and for ideation. A bonus is Google Gemini. Great solution for both visual and text. Flux, which we run on a playground called fowl.ai, is amazing for professional image generation, especially if you want to create some awesome headshots of yourself or your company and bring people to life, which we do all the time at First Movers. In fact, let me share with you our SEO content writing process. So we use the bot that I built called Julie McCoy's SEO Content Blog Post Writer that if you put in a keyword, it instantly begins to write a full blog post using real-time research and actually linking to sources. So in our blog, we use this. See, it's hyperlinking to tools, resources mentioned. In our blog, we use either the thumbnails that we generate for YouTube videos, which is, we're doing so much YouTube content. So it's highest value content. It's bringing in a ton of great leads for us. Informative content on YouTube is a great audience lever. But here's a post that we wrote essentially by hand, right? So this one was doctored up after it came out of the bot, 10 minutes of editing by our SEO writer who spends no more than 4 hours a week on the blog and generates all the posts you see. So she added in some screenshots and made it a specific tutorial after she had the bot generate it. As you see, the image is a generation of me. And so we've trained a Flux Laura, which we have a separate tutorial on that. And that's our branding because it's recognizable. So we're using AI, but to generate a recognizable person that leads our company, which is me. So that is a very simple way we keep very consistent branding going on. When you go to First Movers, you know exactly what to expect. And when you go to our blog, you see that consistent, beautiful content that's coming straight out of the bot, but also has my image on it, again, generated through AI. And you've already seen me talk about my Claude project, but I have used Claude projects to write entire keynotes for stages in front of hundreds of people. I've used it wrote this course. I edited the course, of course. I brought it to life with a lot of my own knowledge. Like this slide, for example, it didn't know which LLM was specific to what. I did because I have that experience. But I had my Claude project shell out the entire course, write the syllabus, the lessons of each titles, dial in the material itself, and then I came in and brought it to life. So you can really do anything in a Claude project with copy in particular. ChatGPT, custom GPTs, like the one I showed you, are great for SEO, SEO content and creating content that requires research, real-time research. You're not going to get that with Claude. You do get that with Search GPT capabilities built right into ChatGPT, and that's why for real-time research, it's awesome. OpenAI is a cutting edge platform. Even when LLMs from other countries supposedly outrank them on the leaderboards, and that has happened, I swear OpenAI just continues to come back with a vengeance, with something better. They are constantly innovating. So the 3 C's of AI communication, when you think of switching over from human-led communication to human in the loop, but AI driving communication, well, these are the 3 C's. You want to be clear with AI. Give it specific instructions. You want to provide context with AI. Give it a rich background. Share a lot of thoughts. Don't just tell it to write a blog on a keyword, which I did in the earlier demo a few minutes ago. Give it some background material. Say, hey, I have these thoughts on this topic. Add this in. And if you're working with a custom GPT, for example, even better, right? Constraints. You need to really define boundaries. What boundaries are you going to set? Don't talk about this. Don't talk about these competitors. Don't reference this archaic system. Don't mention anything from this industry or this vertical or this topic area. So those constraints also really help you produce better content. So for example, when we look at a weak versus a strong prompt, you learned in the other lesson about training data, which is even more important than prompting. But now that you've understood training data, we can talk about prompting. So in a Claude project, if you were just write a tweet about AI, even a trained Claude project won't be as good as the next example, which is write a tweet about AI revolutionizing content creation. Use my authoritative but approachable voice. You've uploaded examples. Include a surprising statistic. You've created some amazing parameters here that guide the AI through what to actually write. You've been clear, you've given it context, and you've given it a constraint. Include a specific thing, a surprising statistic. So a good framework here is something I call brief, where you have background, that's context, you have role. AI is set up with a persona. You've kind of guided it into a role. You've given it intent, a clear goal. You've given it examples. You've shown, not just told it. Hey, my style is authoritative. Here's a blog that I wrote that I love. Format, you've given it specific structure, and that's in the training data, right? We showed it what successful LinkedIn content looks like. It's not just going to write a LinkedIn post. Do you mean a crappy LinkedIn post or do you mean a good one? Big difference between the two, right? So here's brief in action. Your background. I'm a tech founder sharing insights. Your role. You're telling AI, you're an AI writing partner. Your intent to create engaging LinkedIn posts. Examples. You're going to share that training data we talked about. The format. What's the format look like? 3 to 4 paragraphs with a hook first. So when it comes to Claude, some of the best practices here are, first of all, detailed context. Claude eats that up. It understands it. It synthesizes through it. And honestly, there's no better LLM. It has that driver we talked about in other lessons, right? It's the only AI built with constitutional AI, which is AI that aligns with empathy and best practices for humans. I'm not kidding you. Because of that, it loves context, information about you, and it resonates with you, and it acts like your best friend. It's unbelievable. I spent 3 hours once, back to back in Claude, building my book called Fluid. And I was amazed, after we wrote 5 chapters together, how encouraging it felt to work with Claude, how uplifted I felt. The complete opposite of how it normally feels to hire a writer who doesn't understand you, who is there collecting a paycheck and trying to move on to the next gig. It was a completely different experience. And, when you're working with LLMs, sometimes they feel like overeager puppies. Every time I finished writing a chapter section, Claude would go, "That's great. Should we create some marketing material for this next and help you make it a bestseller and tell your email list all about it? What should we do next?" And I was like, I just want to chill and look at this beautiful content we wrote. But I love that, right? And this is the difference of this whole mindset in AI comms versus human communication, right? And if you have this mindset of the industrial age trained us to become machines, Now the machines are training us to become humans again. We have done machine work for too long. If you have that viewpoint, your life will change and AI will begin to make sense. But unfortunately, we've been stuck in machine work so long, we actually think that it's our destiny. Yikes. Hopefully you don't. I don't think you do if you're here. Okay, so Claude also excels with examples, right? We talked about that quite in depth in that prior lesson about training data, which is the most important lesson of this course. It also maintains conversation history, but only to a certain extent. Once you start threading with more than 25 different messages, you want to create a new thread because then it can lose history. There are some constraints in Claude threads within projects. Claude is perfect for long form content. If you want an essay done, now it doesn't have real-time research, right? We talked about that with GPT, big difference. But if you want that copywriter, that empathy, if you want something on Medium, on Substack, on X, that positions you as a freaking killer thought leader, you want Claude. You don't want GPT. Claude is like the Ogilvy of all the LLMs. So when it comes to custom GPT best practices, yes, it loves detailed context as well. The character limit goes up to an incredible amount in custom GPTs. In fact, I'm going to show you. So 8,000 characters is the limit on the instructions. That's quite a bit. We haven't even used half that for the GPT that I've built that actually links to sources correctly, which was hard to do. You can also upload up to 20 different pieces of content, which is incredible. But remember what we talked about in the other lesson. Less is more. You want the best pieces to be your training data. Custom GPTs excel with examples, right? 20 different pieces you can upload as examples. And it maintains conversation history as well to a certain extent. You don't want to ever thread a conversation too long because then you create memory degradation. Both GPT and Claude functions that same way. But custom GPTs are perfect for dialing in specific research elements, writing specific emails, writing different posts, having a research basis for your writing, having a clear strategy, ideating your topics. You could create a custom GPT for everything you do and instantly have a little whittled in writing tool. It's amazing. So when it comes to, we call this prompt power-ups, what are some ways you can really level up your prompts? I use these all the time, a few more than others, I'll tell you which ones, and it really makes a difference. Emotion markers. Oh my gosh. If you tell Claude, please write a powerful, compelling, amazing X post on this topic, it will do a far better job than if you omitted those 3 adjectives. Those are emotion markers. How can you raise the emotion whenever you send an instruction to the machine? Makes a huge difference. Something we've also done on no-code platforms is make this 355% better. And it's just a random little statistic that makes it think differently. You're working with a machine that is capable of reasoning, right? So push that reasoning limit. See what it can do. Include success metrics. This is huge. Here's examples of successful content. Here's what a successful webinar script in the past looked like. Oh, and what audience is this for? We're going to get very specific. You can ask the AI, hey, come up with variations of this prompt. So I'm a better prompter. Make me a better prompt engineer. Rewrite this to be better. What's a better prompt? The machine knows better than us. So going back to emotion markers, because that's so important. Here's another way you could phrase that. You can tell it to write as if you're excited, confident, empathetic, empowered. You can actually give it the emotion to use, not just give it an adjective that drives the output. So you're going to tell it, write this as if you're excited about the breakthrough. No, but do it with heartfelt emotion, right? We talked about that in an earlier lesson. That got incredible output out of O1 Pro versus, hey, talk about what happened. And I fed it the details. No, write this with heartfelt emotion. Write this as if you feel it in your heart. Again, the machine doesn't have a heart, remember? It doesn't have a soul. But because it's been trained on so much data that comes from our human hearts and souls, it can replicate pretty damn well, to the point where you're working with an Ogilvy. You're working with a legend of all legends. There's no copywriter you could hire that has more skill and talent and more data points. I don't mean to offend copywriters. I was one myself, but that's the truth. So if you include what success looks like, specify your audience, and then ask it to vary your prompts, you cannot lose. You're just going to get better and better. If you write your prompts with emotion, you'll also do better. Instead of just, hey, let's write about this today. I'm excited. I'm going to write a book with Claude. Let's see how great we can make this. Instant flip. You will write better prompts. So my homework for you is the next time you sit down and prompt, be emotional. Get excited. See what the best outcome looks like in your mind. Dream about that when you sit down with the LLM you're using. Authoritative, this drives a confident expert tone. Getting empathetic, this drives understanding and support. Enthusiasm, high energy, optimism. Thoughtful, this inspires a reflective, analytical tone. Remember that, right? These different emotions result in a different response from the LLM. Very important. So this is what you want to avoid. You want to avoid being vague, flat, average, unexcited. You want to avoid missing out on context. Give it a lot of context. Tell it the story. And you have to give it examples. Our prior lesson was absolute gold on how to use training data to build your very own AI with any LLM. So put that to good use. We gave you all of our training data as well. And you don't want to use an unclear format. You want to be very clear. And by format, we mean train it on what good LinkedIn content, on what good X content, on what good Facebook content looks like. Train it. So the iteration method, if you start broad and you refine your output and you add constraints and you perfect the tone, that's also a pretty good journey. Although I'm a fan of dialing it in even more at the first go so you can get really great output that inspires you. Last thing you want to do is sit down with an LLM and waste your time. Sit down with a chatbot and get crap content. You don't have to. If you're watching this course, you know by now, especially after the prior lesson, you know how to get gold. So your checklist is, does this match my voice or even make me sound 10 times better? That's actually my bar now. Whenever I go on X and I post a tweet, tweets are getting up to 100,000 impressions. Well, 100,000 impressions a week. It's insane. That output made me look better than if I sat down and tried to rack my tired brain after a long day of running my integration firm, leading my high-level team, our clients. I'm tired, right? I'm not going to be the best writer, even though I am a really good writer. Could I hire a writer? Hell no. When it becomes this easy to work with a machine and actually a better experience. So your output checklist should be, at the very minimum, does this match my voice? Even better to ask, did it do better than what I would have done? Does it hit key messages? This is important because you want accuracy. Is it being accurate? Does it feel authentic to your brand? And of course, does it drive action? And if you've trained it correctly, it will absolutely drive action. So when you go to choose your AI, you really only have to purchase two, a Claude subscription and a ChatGPT Pro subscription. You don't need the $200 a month unless you're doing in-depth mathematical, philosophical, financial strategy work. And then, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've tested it. But you really only need the levels at $20 a month for both of these. And test, right? See which one you like better. So here's a good bit of practice. Write a brief framework prompt for your next content piece. So what's the next thing you're going to use AI to do? Follow this framework. Write down the context, write down the persona you want the AI to have, write down the intent. Ideally, you're typing this into ChatGPT. Give it examples, and then tell it the format with a specific example of something that wins in that format. So again, your success markers, this is consistently sounding like my brand. I'm getting way faster and better at content. I don't need to hire another writer again. Those are great success markers. That's what we want to aim for. You want a 10x, 25x, one person. And if you hire more people, empower those people with the same system. You'll never need to hire a huge team, or you just empower the people that already exist. And you want better engagement. You don't just want efficiency increase. You actually want better results, because you can get better results because we have this infinite engine at our availability. $1 trillion, $20 a month copywriter. Insane. And then what's your scalable process to grow? All right, so that's a wrap for this lesson. Let's head into the next one, content scaling frameworks.